Hi, baddies. Welcome back to another episode of Tara's Baddies Club. It has been a little bit of a moment. I'm going to be putting out episodes kind of sporadically right now because I am working on a big project right now. I'm trying to get my book proposal done. I'm trying to get it done where I can finally just have a chance to sell it. Well, not sell it in a sense because that's really not my goal. I mean, it would be great to sell many, many books, but just to get out my story from my words, fully from my words, and to have a written thing that I have done. So that has been one of my goals for a very, very long time now, and I'm trying to get it done. But today's guest is very special to me. We met on Instagram, and she just has been such a supporter. And I love connecting with Meg. And also, her son also picked me and Collier up at CrimeCon one year and picked us up from the airport. It was so amazing. So I'm going to have on Meg Richard today. Meg is truly a unique and complex individual, often misunderstood. She's not just an incredible mom to two children, but also a survivor in very many ways. She escaped a cult, she conquered cancer, she endured 3 spine surgeries, and even had part of her skull removed. Her strength and resilience define her, but there's so much more to her than meets the eye. I'm so excited to welcome Meg today, so let's welcome her to Tara's Baddies Club. Welcome, Meg. I'm so happy to have you here because I feel like we've been talking about doing this podcast forever, maybe even Survivor Squad or Fireside. There's been a few things that I've done.
Yes, I'm really excited to be here and then for us to connect on a different level. It's been a little while. I feel like it was like right as COVID kind of was happening, so it's been a while at this point.
Yes, and we're already in 2025 now. Yes. And then it's so crazy because you were so kind to even have your son pick me and Collier up from the airport in Florida when we went to CrimeCon.
It is, I feel like, an exciting thing to kind of when people feel like your kids are a reflection of you. And I feel like going through everything I could, I have been through in life that I'm just so proud of my son. So I feel like getting to kind of show him off and it come full circle to be able to help somebody else that's also been through something. And then for him to kind of relate and to see other people that go through things, I think it's an incredible thing, honestly, for me to feel like kind of spread the wealth and then for you to have met him and been like, wow, it's a great thing to, I hope that he, portrays like, oh, this is somebody whose parent went through so much and yet he's a great kid. I feel like it helps offset so many stigmatisms that people feel like, oh, if you went through, certain things, how you'll be as a parent or then how your kids will be. So I feel like the more I can help show off, especially to someone as yourself that's been through something that I feel like appreciates it so much more, it honestly meant a lot for me to be able to do that for you.
Well, thank you. You're also reminding me that there are so many kind gentlemen in this world, when we have not experienced such kind men. And then
Yes.
it's crazy too that how even your son was going to school for something true crime-ish.
Yes, he is right now he's in grad school getting his master's degree in criminal justice. He already graduated already with his associate's degree, I get or his 4-year degree, I'm sorry, and now he's getting his master's degree. I'm sorry. So he had his bachelor's already in criminal justice and now he's getting his master's. So many things in it. And it's been just a really incredible thing, not only for him to pursue this and for it to make him feel good what he's learning, but even real um, recently he in one of his classes they were just learning about so many different statistics of people that go through things and especially at a young age and then how many of them just continue this cycle of abuse or being in the criminal system or just going through so many things that they struggle to be a good person themselves, let alone to be a great parent. So it's just so wonderful that he is taking this and learning a lot, but then also he's just like, wow, mom, I am so thankful for you and that you have managed to offset so many statistics that you aren't in any of those percentages. And it's so nice that sometimes, as a human being, when we try to educate people or you tell them something, and then sometimes they hear it from somebody else and they're like, wow, it just kind of hits a little harder. So for him to hear some of these things from his teacher, it has just made him appreciate even more all that I've gone through. And as you said, just how he appreciates other human beings or appreciates women and understands just how much a little extra of being a kind human being or a good guy or looking out for women, when he sees in college, especially, women drinking and things like that, that it's like, I'm just going to walk you home. I'm just going to make sure you're safe and okay because wow, you see so many guys or different people instantly praying. So I just think that a lot of these things, have really heightened him even more besides what I've taught him to really understand just how far it goes in life or as a person and to be able to implement that professionally where he hopes to be able to make a difference from seeing so many bad things and from hearing someone like you, your different stories. It's just like, yay, I want you to take these bad stories and then be able to use them in a profession or being a good person. So it's really nice when it comes full circle.
Yes, no. And I was so thankful. Collier was so thankful as well. And it was really a great experience to get to talk to him, get to talk to someone that's younger because, we don't meet a lot of 20s.
20-year-old. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I don't know. I just, we're not going out to the bars and
Yeah.
just going hopping and stuff. But anyhow, we didn't do that then. So I think that it's amazing that you're here today and here to share your story. Can you start to tell me a little bit about your story?
Yeah. Well, I spent ages 15 to 20 in a military Christian cult reform school for troubled teens. And a lot of people ask, like, where does the military part come in or the Christian part? And it's just so many aspects of it. But basically, not only was it a reform school for troubled teens, but they did implement a lot of bases that would be in the military, like what time we went to bed, what time we woke up, or just hospital corners or push ups and just certain things and just even the drill sergeant aspect of it. If you didn't do something correct, it was like drop down and, give me 50 push ups or, like sitting against a wall all day and just certain things. So that's like they tried to implement, and even the person that ran it was in the military. So I think he took a lot of those things that he learned and then kind of put it in together with this. Plus, there was a lot of religious base. We would be implemented in their religious beliefs 24/7, basically, from the time you woke up or went to bed. And where that might not be that bad, there was not really any question of any other religion. It was just basically strictly their beliefs all the time. So when you're anyone, especially a young teenager that has gone from living your life kind of wild or doing what you want to do to all of a sudden being forced to listen to somebody else's rules and religious beliefs all the time, of course you're going to have questions and want to understand certain things. And that's where it really kind of made it a little difficult for most of us because you couldn't ask any questions. And that's the part that made it really difficult and where the brainwashing kind of came into play in the physical and mental abuse. Because even if you said, I don't understand something, it wasn't allowed to be questioned. Everything that we did was demanded. This is the belief, this is the rule, this is what you're doing, which I think for anybody makes that a little hard because you can just imagine if all of a sudden you're in a relationship and they demanded how you dressed, the way that you spoke, what you listened to, what music you listened to, you would probably not like that at all for anybody in the free world, let alone if you were being held captive in a place. So I think that it really was difficult. And some of the abuse that they implemented on us was, they would scrub girls down with Brillo pads. They would hold us in ice baths. They would, if you were overweight, they would have the boys moo at you. And these were just like few things that just started, you instantly see off the bat that made it very difficult. I don't know. It's kind of hard sometimes to even grasp how many things that were happening, or for so many people to understand how horrible of a situation it would be. But a good story or aspect would be, there were people that would even play dead, which was they were so miserable and unhappy that they thought if they did nothing, that maybe someone would come rescue them. So there, was a girl one time who was on the top bunk and they just pulled her down and she just hit the floor. And my instant reaction is obviously, oh my goodness, like, is she okay? What do? We have to call the police. Like, is everything okay? And instead, you weren't allowed to notice other people, certain people, if they hadn't been here a certain amount of time. So for that girl, I couldn't even notice her. You couldn't help certain people. So you had to watch people being tortured physically and mentally, and you couldn't say anything, you couldn't do anything, and you couldn't help them. Which you can imagine, as any person has been taught their whole life, most of the time, if you see somebody in help, in need, go help them. And instead, we weren't allowed to. So you had to see people being just dragged around all the time, or they would just, like I said, scrub them raw with a Brillo pad, which is just absolutely horrific. And you kind of just had to go along with these things. Arriving there kind of just was a very traumatic thing. Most of the people, when they arrive, you think you're going somewhere really pleasant. So, for instance, I thought I was going to my grandma's house, and instead I was, left behind by my dad in this religious cult. Instantly, it's just very shocking. And unfortunately, a lot of these places still exist today. And there's not really a lot of regulation or things or anyone that kind of protects kids. So a parent can kind of wake up and think, oh, I don't really care for how, my 12-year-old is acting, and they could send them there. Or I don't really like that my child maybe is gay, and they could send them there and be tortured. So during the time I was there, which 15 to 20 is a pretty significant time in your life. I think that most of us can agree. So I think that being there from those years, it just took a lot out of me mentally and physically. And their goal is to just break you as a human being, which is just very difficult, as you can imagine, to just have someone that's constantly telling you, you're pathetic, you're disgusting, you don't deserve to live, and you're just trying to figure out how this is happening, why this is happening, and is this true? Like, do your parents really not know what's happening? But they just left you there. So it's kind of hard to feel like they don't know. You do feel like for some moments that they do know what's happening to you, and you just feel so broken. You tend to start going along with things, and you just feel like, and now I understand the term is brainwash, but at the time, you just don't really understand what that means to finally feel so broken inside that you've given up all that you are as a human being, all that you believe, and all that you've ever known, and are becoming somebody else just to survive. And that is pretty much what most of us had to do during those moments to just get through it.
Wow. So at the age of 15, why did your dad bring you there?
I had started getting in a lot of trouble and just kind of hanging around with the wrong crowd and things like that. I tell people that I felt like my mom was out saving the world, but leaving me behind. My parents got divorced shortly after I was born, and my dad, he remarried, he had a new wife, new life, and I just kind of was an absent, thought. So unfortunately, between having some anger, no dad in my life really, and my mom just constantly, out or dating different guys. And I really had a lot of financial resources and very limited parental resources. So I took advantage of that. I lived in South Florida. I enjoyed life to the fullest. So really just when my parents then all of a sudden kind of felt like they wanted to have a say in my life more as things started getting public and the police involved in my life, that my parents really felt like, oh no, I think this is time that we do something. So unfortunately for me, it was trick me and send me away to a boarding school, which I had absolutely just no idea in any way something like that was going, but I was just already struggling, with drugs and alcohol. At the time that I got sent away, I had an eating disorder already. I was anorexic, I was bulimic, I had mono. So I really was just struggling. My life was spiraling, out of control. I tell people, like, I did not need to get sent away. I needed parents. I needed, people to be there for me and to intervene in my life. I used to tell my mom all the time, I think we should move. If you moved, I might have a chance, but I don't know how you want me to change or stop hanging out. Like, I'm sure we all, it's hard as a teenager. And, and I tell people that, unfortunately, that you want your child to maybe become different or hang out in a different situation, but are you going to become different? Because your kids need you. So all that you want them to change or to become a great kid, but if you're not in changing their environments, helping them get away from some of these bad people, or you yourself are not willing to be a better parent, it's so much pressure on a child who's acting like an adult, in an adult world, to make all these decisions. And then we just want them to be held to this standard that I really felt like it was impossible, even if I had wanted to change, to find change, to get out of the situation I was in and to get somewhere that, although I think they thought that might have been pleasant, I think researching where you send your kids or not making harsh decisions when it's so urgent. Like, there are moments you can tell leading up to kids acting out or going through things. It's not just like one night, all of a sudden, something happens. There's usually lots of moments that lead up to these things that either most parents or people want to ignore, or at that time you're just like, okay, we'll kind of deal with it. We'll kind of deal with it. And then all of a sudden it's this huge thing that it's like, well, now we urgently have to deal with it. And it's like, well, it would have been better, like anything in life, if you start patching things instead of waiting until there's like a huge, flood to deal with the situation. I felt like things had kind of, spiraled. So you can imagine showing up to this place that doesn't believe in mental wellness with an eating disorder and mono and a drug and alcohol problem. It was very difficult mentally and physically for me. Shortly after I got there, they put me on what was called snacks and shakes because I was so underweight. And a huge aspect of their thing is also how you present yourself. Women should look a certain way, and that's even being a certain size and your makeup. So I was too underweight actually for them. So the aspect of snacks and shakes was I had to eat 3 separate times on top in between meals and then have a huge milkshake before bed, which I know that a lot of people might think like, oh, that sounds amazing. But if you are struggling with how you feel about your body and you have an eating disorder, it was very difficult for me, not only physically, but mentally. And I just was very sick. Plus, it then actually pinned other girls against me because now they're jealous. Why do you get snacks? That's not fair. So not only then am I now struggling with my stomach and just certain things like that, and I'm, mentally like very upset that I'm kind of gaining weight now. They wouldn't let me, look in the mirror. I wasn't allowed to look at a scale. And now other girls are mad at me because they think it's unfair that I'm getting these special privileges. So there were just little things that they would do to constantly make sure, almost, it's kind of like jail, that people are mad at each other all the times so they can't group up together, and overpower the system, which it's horrible because then you constantly feel like you're scared. You're not only scared of the staff, you're scared of other students, that they'll get you in trouble, that they'll tell on you. And you just never know at any point when something bad is going to happen to you. So you are honestly living in fight or flight mode all the time. I mean, someone could attack you in the middle of the night. So a staff member could wake you up in the middle of the night. You just really never know at all, which is very difficult for anybody, but let alone, a teenager, I think, that's going through so many things, or your hormones are already going through a lot. And to just be scared all the time, it was really difficult. I think that's unfortunately why so many people that have been through it still struggle, amongst other reasons, just so much mentally, because it's really hard, I feel like, to get to a place where you can relax in life after going through something so traumatic to your core.
This place sounds like Sucker Punch, if you've seen that movie.
Yes, yes.
I just have so many questions, I feel now.
And so I was like, let me give a little break and then you could kind of like recap because it's sometimes even now where I'm trying to explain, there's just so many things that it's like I want to hit on and help people really understand, especially I think anyone, that when you're a teenager or any female that's like ever struggled with any body issues or just anything. So to picture, what that's like, or how I briefly mentioned just being on the other side, if they thought somebody was overweight, they would make them get up early and go walk outside. So you had to get up before everybody else and go walk outside. They would put them on a diet. So what they ate had to be all very strict. And this was not a choice. This was someone going up to them and saying, you're large. From now on, you're on a diet. You can only eat, special foods. You can only drink certain things. You have to exercise multiple times. And then they would, when they walked, because there were guys, we couldn't speak to them. They'd be on the other side for everything. Even that we had to serve them, be subservient to the men and to the guys. So anytime the large girls then would be going to eat, they would have the guys moo at them. Which you can imagine again. I want you to like picture if you were in a normal high school, how it would feel if one girl felt heavy and there was one guy mooing, but then to take 40 guys and moo at every person that they were told was heavy, wait, what that would do to you, not only that, just forever. Mentally just make you feel so small. And that was just the kindest form of mental punishment. Like that was an easy day that they could, that didn't seem that bad. So it's like for people to be like, oh, that was a nothing experience compared to everything. Like that's horrible. And that's just, and this is where I get into when they feel like, oh, this is all for Jesus. And you're like, I don't think that Jesus wants you making people feel so disgusting about themselves, like I'm confused here.
Yes. So take me through what the first date kind of looked like and what they presented it to be. Did your dad just take you there? They presented something else to him?
So basically, instantly, even walking in, I thought it was one of my grandmas. So I'm all excited to see my grandma. And instantly, there are a group of girls just right in front of us and an older man. So my dad is instantly pulled into this other office. So off the bat, I instantly, because of being in trouble and hanging out with the wrong crowd, I actually think that we're being jumped or like that somebody from my past somehow, like something bad. So I'm at first worried for my dad's safety. I go from being like, oh my God, dad, are you okay? Screaming, worrying where he's at, to realizing by the man telling me, don't worry, your dad's fine. You're going to go with these girls, to then being like, wait, my dad is doing that? Like it was a quick mind thing to go from worrying about my dad to realizing this is happening because of my dad. It's a lot to take in. Even then, within instantly, I begin fighting. They take me down to the ground, so I'm on the ground being held by these girls. I'm trying to take in what is happening. And this guy lets me know that they're going to take me downstairs and kind of go over some of the rules and explain what's happening to me. So for about 5 hours, I'm sitting downstairs, basically corner, kind of against a wall where they sit in kind of like a U shape around me. And I knew off the bat that there was something just wrong. They were very different than anything I had ever heard or experienced. They were all dressed alike. At the time, I didn't even really understand. They started explaining, like, oh, we wear culottes and we wear long skirts. And I was like, I don't know what any of you guys are talking about. I grew up Catholic. Everything they're saying to me, I honestly, it sounds so weird. And they kind of speak almost like in unison. They're all very, everything they say, it feels almost like rehearsed, or that they've all just been trained to speak this way. And even one of the girls is talking about how she used to be in trouble, but she met Jesus and she loves the Lord and now she wants to stay here forever. And they all are talking like that. One of them talks about how she's a staff kid. Her parents actually work and live here. But it just sounds so weird to me, especially they're talking about you can't ever leave and none of them ever want to leave. And I was like, what do you guys do for fun? And they're like, we go to church and we sing and we read the Bible. And I was like, what? I just was at the nightclub, I'm 15, I'm out having fun. I'm like, so you guys don't drink, you don't smoke. What do you guys do? Do you talk to boys? And they're like, no, we don't. No, we went away from marriage and and I was like, oh my God. So instantly when I see my dad, I was like, let's go. Like we need to go now. This place is so weird. And he's like, Meg, in this like tone, like patronizing, but he's like, puts his hand on my shoulder. And instantly, in your gut, like I felt sick to my stomach. And I was like, what's happening? And he's like, this is what's best. And I was like, no. So I start pleading with him, like, I will be whatever, like, but we need to go. Like I feel like if you picture any horror movie scenario and someone's trying to convince someone, like, please believe me, we have to go. Like that was me in this moment, begging him, pleading, like, please. And then when I realized that he's just like, I'm seeing like a total, blank face, like it's not resonating with him at all how upset I am or how creepy these people are. So then I began like, I will hate you. Like I will like never talk to you again. Like just get me out of here. And then unfortunately though, he was just, this is what's best for you. Your mom and I have decided. And I'm freaking out, honestly, at this point. Like I am terrified, I'm angry, I'm upset, and I start just screaming and crying, and just he just turns and walks away. And I was yelling so loud for him, like I'm trying to run after him, and these girls just hold me back. And it's like, this is your new home. And I didn't even have a moment to process what had happened, and instantly it's like, oh, it's time to take a shower. You're gonna get undressed and you're gonna get deloused and drink warm medicine. And I'm just like, no, I'm fighting and letting them know, like I'm not staying, I don't care, like I don't want to be here. And I'm screaming still for my dad. I'm like, he can't be that far. But he did not come back. And within moments, they, are ripping off my clothes. I'm in this just like cold tile hallway, and they take off all my jewelry. And even that, like I'm holding on, like for dear life to my necklace. Like, it's not even like, that expensive, but it's just more the sentimental. Like, I can't even believe it's hard, I'm sure anyone that's ever been violated and, people are taking your clothes off you. And it's just, even if it's just like this little piece of jewelry, just like holding it on, that you feel like it's just a part of yourself. And they took everything out. They take out, your ear piercings, every piece of jewelry, your hair ties. And, I'm standing in the shower in front of, all these strange girls. There was like 8 girls. I don't, I'm totally naked. I have an eating disorder. So you can imagine I am very self-conscious about my body, and to be standing in front of a group of strangers, being, if anyone's ever had to do lice or body wash, lice wash, you have to stand there and let it sit for like 5 minutes. So I felt like they were the longest 5 minutes of my life. I'm, standing there just naked, freezing with this lice shampoo. And even that, you just feel like this is disgusting. Like don't have lice. And, and they gave me this warm medicine to drink. And I just felt so violated in every way possible. And then it's just like, can I please have my clothes or my own underwear? And you have to wear somebody else's clothes, somebody else's underwear, and this pajama. And they basically just told me then to get into bed again, somebody else's sheets, blankets. I have nothing. I have absolutely nothing that is my own. After something so traumatizing, I'm told to just get into bed and to lay down and to go to sleep. And everyone else is already in bed because by now it's been so late that it's their bedtime, and I'm supposed to just lay down and go to sleep. And I can't even stop but cry. I can barely breathe. Like I am covered in hives and just like freaking out. And I try to sit up, and then they have what's called safety patrol, which is people that just walk around all the time. There's alarms everywhere. And every time I would try to sit up, someone come flash a flashlight in my face and just tell me to lay down. And then if I can't do it on my own, someone's just going to hold me down all night long. And then I better shut up. And where you think like any person might have some ounce of sympathy, you just hear other people being like, shut up. And I'm just like, oh my God, like, where am I? And I really like hope like maybe this is like a scary thing, or like the next day my dad's just going to come and it'll be over, and then like the next morning, just like I'm woken by these fluorescent lights that are inches, for my face because I'm on the top bunk. And these people are just like, okay, let's go now. You got to brush your teeth. Get up, get up. This we have to wear. And I was just like, okay, this is not, and this is a nightmare, but I am not waking up. Like, oh my God, and just to realize this is my new home. And then instantly this person's like, I'm your orientation guide. Basically, you stay with me all the time. You can't talk to certain people. You can't be away from me. This is what you wear. And it was just like, okay, it was a lot, so much to just process that it just really didn't even feel real. I felt like I just kept crying nonstop. Like I felt like I hadn't cried that much in my whole entire life. And then all of a sudden, within 24 hours, I felt like I just couldn't even stop or like catch my breath or even really fathom what had just taken place, honestly.
Well, thank you for sharing that with me. I know I could just feel that it wasn't easy to share and that it's such a heavy trauma and honestly something you would really see in the horror movies. So, just thank you so much for allowing that vulnerability for us. So, you mentioned earlier that this place also had such a big, heavy religious aspect. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so they were fundamental, extreme Baptist, Bible believing, KJV all the way, and it's like even if someone tried to send in a different Bible, that would not be allowed. It absolutely had to be KJV all the way. That's how they believed. If you had your skirt had to be 2 inches above your ankle bone. Your shirt had to be no more than 2 inches below. You couldn't be lower 2 fingers below your collarbone. There are just so many things that you're just like, wow, as far as the religious aspect, because it's not like there's anything wrong with believing in anything or having a belief in a religious aspect or loving God, but they had it that you couldn't believe in anything but their way. If you even said the word shorts, you got in trouble because you had to say culottes. So I mean, to be writing, lines, they would have you write these lines that like, I will behave myself in a studious manner while attending Mountain Park Baptist Boarding Academy. And you would have to write this like 500 times. And, you'd get in trouble if you didn't. And like just saying the word shorts, and you're just like, I just don't understand what is so wrong with that. And you couldn't even question something like that. Or if somebody came in and they had grown up Jewish their whole life, you couldn't even talk about that. You couldn't talk about any of your Jewish beliefs. You couldn't talk about Catholicism. If you had any other thought, or even if you were like, oh, I read the NIV, which is just another form of the Bible, they would say, that's absolutely false. We do not believe in that Bible. And that's yours. So even if, someone had a question, it was more, you cannot question this. This is how you have to believe. And they would believe that you needed to accept Jesus Christ into your heart as your Lord and Savior, which is fine. That's great, to be saved. But it was more, if you are not saved, you're disgusting. And they would remind you constantly. And that's where I just don't believe that like making someone feel horrible about themselves 24/7 if they don't believe in your way is okay, is okay. And they would have, people that didn't get saved for a long time, they would have other people just read the Bible to them all the time. So they would just constantly be quoting to them, basically until they broke you enough to finally say, I believe. Which then most of the people then that say that, they don't actually believe or accept Jesus. They're just so terrified at that point. They're willing to say anything. And they, we had Bible study. If we weren't having Bible study, we had church. So we had church. We would have Bible study Sunday morning, and then we would have church, and then and then we would have church again in the evening, and then also church on Wednesday. And then every evening in between, we would have Bible study. And even all of our curriculum was basically, it's called ACE, which is Accelerated Christian Education. So every single thing that you're learning throughout the day is religiously based as well. They're constantly like, if you're not hearing it from them, you are learning it in some form. And we also had to memorize the Bible. So you had to memorize 3 verses a day and then compile like additionally onto that. So say for instance, if you were saying, I don't know, like Isaiah 6 or however many, verses were in the whole chapter, you would eventually have to say all of them. Like Matthew 5, I think has 48 verses. You would have to say all 48 verses and you got no helps. So if you even forgot the word the, you would have to say it all over again. Which It's a lot. And if you messed up, then we got to watch a movie once a week on Friday nights, which is usually an older movie or something religiously based, but it was still 2 hours a night that you felt like a normal human being. We got popcorn, you got to just relax a little bit. So if you didn't get your Bible memory, you did not get to see the movie. So most of us wanted to get the Bible memory. And if you then miss that, then more consequences would happen. So you felt this like overwhelming pressure and anxiety all the time. And you're memorizing the Bible. So I always felt like it was so contradicting because here I am supposed to be like reading and, scripture and memorizing it to be able to possibly spread it for other human beings. And instead, I have so much anxiety. I feel like I have an ulcer because if I don't get this right, I'm going to be punished. So you just feel like a lot where I think it would have been nicer to feel like, hey, this is an option for you to find your way and to find yourself. I think a lot more people would have willingly and wantingly tried to find something to help them navigate their lives instead of feeling like, if I don't do this, I'm going to hell. Or constantly hearing, oh, if you do go out of your race, you're going to hell. If you do marry somebody of the same sex, you're going to hell. Or, oh, your grandma that just passed away, she was Catholic, she's in hell. And that's the thing that you're just like, oh my God, and then if you would get upset or cry, which is a normal thing, if you lost a loved one while you're there, they would be like, you wouldn't be crying at home, you'd be partying. And you're just like, what? Just because I happen to like to go out and party, I would still be sad if I lost a family member. So they constantly, like, no matter what you were going through, it was like, oh, you're a bad person. You wouldn't really be sad. And I'm sorry that if they didn't accept Jesus, they're in hell. And you're just like, oh my God. So sometimes I felt like the religious part could have gone in such a better way, or just really they were so hypocritical about it, like you can't wear pants, but then they would get on their private airplane that they owned and they would put on pants. So you're just like, okay, are you doing this to torture us actually, or do you have any belief? So I feel like that part really made it difficult to just feel like everything you did was wrong. Or this one time, occasionally you got visits, you could go see your parents for a few days, and even then you just were so afraid that they had people watching or your parents would relay. But this one girl, her and her family had gone out to a Mexican restaurant, and she got a mocktail margarita because all her friends were her parents and stuff were drinking, so she got a fake frozen drink, no alcohol. She was just having fun, and her parents had sent back a picture, and she got in so much trouble. You would have thought that they sent back her like naked or something because she got put back on orientation. She had to start basically all over again being punished. And they was just like, what type of Christian mocks alcoholism and that you would actually drink and all this stuff? And she's like, my parents made me. We're all having fun. They're all drinking and they wanted me to partake. So I just got a non-alcoholic drink. Like, I swear it's not, to make anyone feel. So just little things like that they would tie into religion when it seemed convenient or just to make you feel bad, or if it wasn't their way, it was all the time. And I just feel like that is the opposite. How, you're really spreading love or spreading the word by just, beating it into people. Like literally corporal punishment into believing their ways. And that's where I feel like it deters people from that, unfortunately, because then they associate being tortured with that belief. And it's like, no, don't.
Oh, wow. So, oh my gosh, there's just so many questions I have. It just is, I don't want to say crazy because like you experienced that, but I think it's crazy what you had to
Yeah.
experience. So you were in it for 5 years.
Yes.
Why did you stay after 18? Did you like
It's a little of both of feeling I had nowhere to go. You feel at the time that is where I did feel like this is where I belong. This is my home. Not necessarily in a good way, really by feeling like my parents don't want me home. They made that clear that they didn't want me home. And then you kind of get in your head because everybody else is like, oh, you stay till you graduate. It's kind of just what you do. And I feel like it is basically brainwashed in your head that you just can't leave. Like this is where you're supposed to be, this is where you're supposed to stay. And you almost think like it's exciting, like to get to be there almost. I don't know how to explain it. You're so broken to feel like you have nowhere else to go and that nobody wants you and that this is what you have to be doing. And you're just so afraid and broken and abused that I did feel like I don't know what to do. I didn't even think at the time when I look back. I even asked myself that so many times that I never even thought it was an option, if that makes sense. I just didn't even think I could leave. And even that, I had cancer. And at one point was just like, I can't even believe I'm allowing all these people to dictate my life. But I'm so afraid that I just don't even think I can leave. I don't even think, like, it didn't even fathom to me that it's an option. I had seen one person when she did turn 18, show her cards, like, oh, I do want to leave. And it's like, okay, well, go ahead. All the doors are locked. And we work at the local sheriff. And if you want to go, those are our clothes, those are your parents' clothes. So you'd have to like leave naked. And then the police will be there and you just feel like you have no control. You have really no one that will help you out. Like, where would I go? My parents want me to be there, so I don't really know anybody. I feel this weird dedication now to these people that run this school as if like I want to please and serve them. But in reality, I'm just so broken and abused by them that I feel, you feel, unfortunately, anyone that's like been in an abusive relationship, sometimes you just feel so broken by the person when you're in it. You really think like, oh, it's not that bad. This is my life, like if then you're just like going through the motions of how do I just get through the situation that you just don't even realize you can leave or you're capable of leaving. It really wasn't for me, honestly, until I started going through my cancer stuff, which is really difficult because I just started experiencing a lot of nausea and intense stomach pains and breaking out hives. And by the time I would finally get to go to the doctor, they couldn't find anything wrong. So I was like, oh, so I went through this for about a year. And with being at the school, sometimes they would finally take me to the doctor. But again, by the time they would do tests, they couldn't find anything. Or they would have my parents take me home just for the day to go do these tests and then go back to school, which was very difficult in every aspect because I'm going home to do these medical tests, which were very invasive and horrific, like a colonoscopy. I had to do a barium enema, which any of these things, most people then spend days just at least recovering. I'm already in a lot of pain. So then I would go back to school, and unfortunately, they couldn't find anything wrong for almost a year. So this whole time, I am managing being in excruciating pain, having hives, doing all these tests, and no one is really comforting me. My parents, when they have to take me, they kind of make me feel bad. Like, I can't believe I'm taking time off work. There's nothing wrong with you. Some of the doctors were telling them it was in my head and that I should see a therapist, that I was probably seeking attention. Then the people at the boarding school were like, oh, you're faking. So then they would punish me even more. And then they would kind of, it was very isolating because then when I would actually be like vomiting, they would make me stay by myself while the other girls, when they would be doing stuff, or I would still have to run and participate. There was one time I had to run, a mile, and I'm just vomiting the whole time. And I was very afraid I would end up just dying there, honestly. And finally, it was the day before I was supposed to finally graduate high school from there. And they took me to the doctor, and it turned out the doctor said that actually, I feel like nothing's wrong, but let's just take out your appendix just to be safe because you've been going through all this stuff. And it turned out that I had a cancerous carcinoid tumor growing on my appendix. And he's like, honestly, you would have just died. It's like, so glad at least you just kept fighting that someone took you to the doctor. And even then, where I thought, during all of those doctor appointments, not one point, where my parents like, wow, you should just stay home. I am 18, 19 years old going through all this. And it's why I felt then sometimes like, what do I even do? No one, seems to want me. And the worst people are the only people acting like they want me there while torturing me. So it's just like, I felt like I really had nowhere to go. And then even after that, when I finally was diagnosed with cancer, and again, where I thought, my parents may be like, oh my God, you should stay home. We love you so much. I can't believe it was kind of like, okay, well, I guess we'll figure out real quick. And you're oncologist and stuff. And then I guess you're just going to go back to work. And that's kind of when then I even stayed on a year. And the only thing really I feel like, as hard as it was going through my cancer journey, it really saved me because I felt like mentally I started realizing more as I was going through all of that and all of my treatment and seeing these doctors of my strength, and that I did have the strength to leave. I didn't want to be there anymore. So I started figuring out, unfortunately, they kind of make it feel if you're not going to a Christian college or you're getting married, you can't leave. So I did then find a Christian college and figure out what I needed to do to leave and to get there. And they really just started isolating me even more as I got ready to finally leave. I wasn't allowed to like really talk to a lot of the girls, and they tried to just do everything they could to make my life miserable. Like where I was staying or sleeping, or then they would just kind of, I don't know, antagonize me and make my life even harder to where it finally was like, okay, I feel like how bad they're treating me. I realize now what I really need to see, if that makes sense. So then I finally did leave, but it was after 5 years. And it really wasn't until I feel like a lot later that I just even look back and realize, and it took a lot to not be mad at myself, I guess, like most of us do when we're in a bad situation. Later, we kind of then are like, how did I not see this, and this, and this? Or why didn't I have the strength to leave then? But I just try to remind myself that any strength that we finally have to get through it, or there's so many things that we don't realize until after the fact when we're just getting through it, the abuse and the hardship, how bad it really is. You just are trying to just get through every day and just try to get through the moment. And it was just so scary. I felt like if they knew I didn't want to be there, or if they knew how I felt, how much worse it would be. And I feel like we've all seen, unfortunately, from like Britney Spears, that it's hard to have control if there are people that genuinely are controlling you or making you feel like you're the bad person and you just don't know what to do. Sometimes it's hard if you don't have a community or friends or anyone to kind of have your back. And that's really how most of us feel in that situation, which unfortunately is what they want. Like any abuser, they isolate you, they paint you out to be this bad person to other people, and now you're just stuck with nobody in your corner and everyone that thinks that you're the bad one or you're the crazy person, and they have just taken this control of your life, which is unfortunately kind of why why then I felt like stuck there.
No, I hope you didn't take that question of like,
Oh,
why
no, 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 no,
didn't you
no, no.
leave? Because I was thinking it's a school, usually you fade out when you're 18, you know?
Yeah. No, lots of people ask that, and it's like I feel like the hardest question sometimes because I'm like, I wish I would have, and I'm like, I don't know. They just, it's so, you just feel so locked and confined, and that the doors are locked, and you're just so terrified. Like any unfortunately person in an abusive situation, you're like, the moment they know I want to go, I have to be totally ready to go, or like what's gonna happen, and like that's how you feel. You're just like, God, if I show right now I want to leave, like where will I go? What will happen?
Yes. And then I was like, did she like level up to like in charge or something of something? I don't know. Because there are so many different schools out there like that, but this one is unique in its own sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, how did you finally leave?
Thankfully, so I had applied to this one college called Clearwater Christian, which is not too far. And even that, I went on my own. I got like a little ACT book on and would just kind of like in my own time, like study it and try to figure it out. And I got an appointment and went, and took my ACT, and then getting accepted to that school. Even that, they were like, well, it's not technically one that we would really approve of, but since it is a Christian school, like we'll allow that. So basically, then I was like, okay, thank God. So then I got applied, accepted there. And then my dad came and got me. And then I went home for about a month. And even then, I was kind of like, whoa, what if I were to stay? And both my parents were like, you're not staying here. So even then, I just felt like, okay, great. And unfortunately, then, which then led to feeling like I have no place, the church I was going to, which was recommended from them, that's then where I met my ex husband, unfortunately, because then I felt so lost. And again, like no one, again, you wanted me. So then I'm at church and just open for another, wolf in sheep's clothing. So unfortunately, so I did end up going to Christian to Clearwater Christian for a few months, but I had a really tough time because it felt, at the time, I didn't really understand what PTSD was or anxiety. I just was like, I don't know why I'm freaking out here. But it was so much to me like my boarding school, you had to be in your a dorm by 9 o'clock and people would come check around. Or then there were certain times for church, which is totally fine. But it being so soon to my boarding school at the time, I was like, I don't know why, but this is making me freak out. So I didn't really last, unfortunately, that long there. And then I just ended up getting married, having a baby all right away because it was just so like, unfortunately, not having anyone kind of in my back or my parents then making me still feel like if you're not this way or still, Mountain Park way, that I'm not accepted, or I just felt very scared, I guess, of what would happen or them putting me somewhere else. That it's crazy, unfortunately, how many people that go through this either end up in an abusive relationship or in the military. And it's like so many of us are so afraid of just being put somewhere. Again, you just don't even really understand, at this moment, you just know you got out of this situation where you didn't have any freedom and everything from your life was taken away from you, that you just don't know how is this possible, it won't happen again. So you just don't really know like who to trust or what to do. So unfortunately, a lot of us fall for these horrible guys that are just like, I'll protect you, but really they're just trying to do the same thing, and they just see, unfortunately, people that have been broken that they could take advantage of. So it's so horrible that, unfortunately, most of the people that go through this do end up in that situation for a while until they're like, wait, let me refine my strength again. I don't have to go through this.
I think so many people go through traumatic events and traumatic seasons of their life, and maybe their whole life is traumatic, and then they get into these toxic relationships. And I have noticed that some people can claim to be Christians and then not be Christians. That was a theme upon many of my mom's broken relationships. But I know you wanted to talk about the cult aspects. Let's maybe talk about that and then get into the Patreon portion, which is the extended portion for the Patreon, for paid Patreon members, and talk about maybe the healing journey and anything else you want to talk about.
Okay.
But what were some of the aspects for this to be a cult?
I would say it's been pretty crazy and interesting to see, the main person that started, his name was Lester Roloff, and he then found basically just other people to kind of recruit them to go in his beliefs. And even he has this book that even it basically even lists like a diet, or how women should be and how kids should be raised. And this is his belief. And then he basically recruited the two people, their names are Bob and Betty Wills, to basically open schools. He was at church with them one day and there was an unwed teenager and, pregnant. And they were like, who would want to take in this unwed girl? She's this horrible sinner. Who will take her in? And that's how they even got started. Basically, in Mississippi, they started taking in unwed women, girls, teenage girls, and they would drug them and take away their babies and give them up for adoption. And then when that was shut down, they then opened up Mountain Park. And they basically, if you get probably 20, 30 different people, even more, from anywhere that's had to do with this person, Lester Roloff, or this structure of these boarding schools, their words will almost verbatim be of what they were taught or the experience. And you're just like, wow, that is pretty insane. And the more that you start to realize that it's like a cult aspect of what they want, they're teaching, they're learning, the way that they want people to believe, that it's not just, oh, this is a religious aspect. It's like, has to be our way. And it's where they then even involve, political aspect or things that they believe should be happening to continue on in the world. And then you realize, you're like, oh my gosh, this is disgusting. I didn't even know, what a cult was really until the later you realize it. And then the people are like, you're in a cult, right? Like, and then you're just like, oh, okay. But even just some of these teachings or certain things that they believe, it's just continuing, brainwashing, or these, it's so crazy that now I'll see certain things and I'll be like, that kind of seems like a cult, like any large groups of certain belief things, you're just like, oh, okay. but just the way that they honestly just really believed and guided people, or even they believe that women should only go to college to get their MRS degree, which is basically get married, to become a Mrs. And that, women belong barefoot, pregnant, and in the kitchen. This is their life motto, and they basically just kind of reiterate that, or these views that they feel should continue on. They had, as you walked in the front lobby, there was a picture of Bob and Betty Wills, and then slightly higher was this huge, poster or picture of framed of Lester Roloff. And, they just kind of worshiped him. And then, oh, this is what the Roloff, ministries, we would have to sit and listen to his preacher tapes. Like, say on a Saturday, they would put on these, old school cassette tapes of him preaching for hours. We would have to listen to this for like 8 hours. And then he had these, like the Honeybee Quartet, and they would, be singing these songs. So they would just have you sit there. You can imagine, for 6 to 8 hours, or keeping us awake at night all night long while they would search the dorms and listen to these tapes over and over to be like, oh, this is how you should believe. This is the way. These are his rules. And you're just like, oh my God, to be like indoctrinated in these beliefs all the time. It was just very overwhelming sometimes, and mentally, to then, I didn't even think that much of it. And then the first time I saw my grandma after going there, she was just like, oh my God, you've been brainwashed. What's wrong with you? And I was like, I don't even know what you're saying. What does that even mean? Like later realizing, you're just like, oh, okay. Just like, so I just feel like a lot of these places, it's so bad when they take, these certain methods or certain things, and these aren't even people that, are profound scholars. It's just like some random person that was at a church that then other people are like, okay, we're going to believe everything you say all the time. And they just recruit other couples. They go to churches and they recruit other people and couples to come have them live at these schools and churches. And I always tell people, I'm like, I just don't really know how that wouldn't be a red flag to any human being, that your husband is like, let's go work with teenage rebellious girls. I mean, like right there, you're just like, so you want to go work with girls that most people, are saying are like sexually, like advanced or like luring, and that's where you want to go. So it's just like they would find, I felt like, the creepiest people. They don't do background checks. I tell people, unfortunately, like, if you want to find a raping racist, unfortunately, these are the places they go hide in, under these, umbrella acts of just like, oh, it's a religious acceptance. Anyone can come in. And I feel like, unfortunately, then they're kind of just reiterating, these beliefs and getting people just to kind of continue it on without any actual education knowledge. None of them have any degree in teaching. They're just going off this one person's belief and then just kind of passing it on through the generations and making their kids, live there. There are kids that are being born there. It's almost, like a compound aspect of just continuing this cycle.
Yeah. I also think that there's different cult like aspects where people are all dressing alike. There's the rules, there's the basically forcing upon things, the coercion. There is just, the abuse, the mental abuse, the physical abuse. There is just so many things that make it so cult like.
Yeah.
Yes.
Especially too, when you walk in a room and every person, you're just like, why does everyone look alike? Are we in like Stepford Wives? Like, what is happening? And it's just like everyone, yes, sir. No, sir. We had to call the owners, the people that ran the place, Mama and the Wills, Mama and Papa. When they would come into town, it was just so gross. You had to stop what you're doing and sing to them. We love you, Mama. Oh, yes, we do. And then be like, we don't love anyone as much as you. It's like, when you're not with us, we're blue. Oh, Mama, how we love you. And they would make, like, as soon as you saw them, if they would come back into town, it was so gross. Honestly, they'd be like, Mama and Papa are coming. Mama and Papa are coming. And it's like, they're people, like, it's like, you imagine like anytime your boss is coming in that you'd have to just stop, stand up, and just start singing, and it was like, okay, this isn't like a cult. I just don't know, like, what is happening, especially when you're new, you're just like, who cares? They're just like an old couple. I don't understand. And people like, hurry, I can't believe you disrespected them. It was just like this fear when they would come around. And even she, is this old lady, but she, I tell people too, even I felt like they faked their age and stuff when you realize their age later on, and they would persona themselves like this little old couple, but they were like in their late 50s looking like they're 80. And I felt like even that was part of the sell of like, oh, they're so sweet and innocent. It's like, no, they're not. They're fooling, like she would come around and she would use like her two fingers and like bang them in your chest, and it would be like all black and blue, and you're just like, oh my god, there were just little things that they would do and hold this hierarchy of that they're so important that you had to bow down. And their daughter worked there as well, and if you just went and even approached one of them, they'd be like, how dare you just approach, like she's like the Queen of England or something, and you're just like, what is happening? They're not a guy. Like, why are we stuck like treating these people? And then when you see like other cult aspects or people that other people think they're so high up on this pedestal, and it's like, they're just average human beings, like anyone that I feel like puts themselves like that, you should question.
100%. Well, I feel like this is so interesting and people should just continue on for the Patreon. But for the people that are dropping off here, where can we find you on social media? Where can we connect with you?
My Instagram is Meg's Law of Positivity, and I do have a TikTok, but it's called just Mountain Park Academy, and I really just share all things about my boarding school there. But the best one is really on Instagram if you want to be motivated or at least just learn a little bit about myself and everything I've been through a lot medically as well. I've had 3 spine surgeries and brain surgeries, so I really just try to encourage people also just to keep going, even if, life gives you a little bit offset that you're not used to, that it's nice to just be like, okay, someone that has gone through a lot traumatically, physically, and mentally, and is still encouraging people.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much. And we'll continue on for the Patreon. Thank you for listening to this episode of Tara's Baddies Club. I hope that you enjoyed it. If you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe, hit the like button, and leave a comment because I love to hear your comments on YouTube. But if you're on Apple or Spotify, please make sure that you are subscribed as well and that you leave a nice great review and 5 stars. It always helps in growing the podcast and getting more survivor stories out there. So I want to thank you so much. And until next time, I'm Terra Newell.